All right. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Prime Sports NASCAR, Prime Sports Network, as we preview the Pennzoil 400 from Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now that we are out of the state of Florida, maybe we'll get back to some normal racing. Even though we like parody. We like parody, guys, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Love it. And Florida, I love the state of Florida, but is there anything normal that comes from the state of Florida in general?
No.
Even the racetracks are provide some odd stuff.
Yeah. So it's hey, bottom line though, parody's a good thing. And as Eric and I talked about on Monday, hopefully we can start to formulate a little bit better handicapping plan to understand the parody more, right, CJ? Because otherwise it's just pot luck, and there's just too many drivers out there to guess who's going to win at any given week.
Yeah, and I think our picks this week kind of say that we're still looking for some sort of
yeah, they're all over the place
where people stand. And I thought we would have gotten a little bit better indication last week than we actually did. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. There are a couple people that look fast, but again, you don't really know until we get to these tracks, more 1.5 mile ovals that they're going to be visiting 2 times a year.
Yeah, and the other thing I noticed too, Eric, is that not only, let's see, do we have 3 drivers who have a combined, 1 win?
Heading into this year, yeah.
In the Cup Series, yeah.
Yep.
If you look at it, they have started 17th, 12th, and 31st, and they've driven a Ford, a Toyota, and a Chevy.
There you go.
The average starting position for the 3 race winners is 20th. So, and then if you take a look at Las Vegas, here's an interesting stat. 10 of the 26 winners all time at Las Vegas started outside the top 16. Outside the top 8 rows, which is crazy. The last 5 winners started outside the top 2 rows, and there's only been 1 pole sitter in the history of a Cup Series racing at this racetrack, Eric.
Yeah, this is a random track in a sense. The last couple of years, if you remember, obviously take last year out, but the years, spring you can count, and the year before, it was an impound race. So there were some guys that were going off qualifying speed, and hey, we just need to start up front. And you had a lot of other guys that just, hey, we're just going to qualify on a race pace. I'm not going to go try to make a bunch of changes during the race. I'm going to practice and qualify on what I'm going to race. And that was the winning strategy. I think the couple of years in a row, Stewart-Haas was like 1, 2, 3, 4. And they all faded. And you see the Toyotas who never typically qualified well come to the front. So I think that's kind of where you see a lot of guys that started towards the back move forward and win. But this year's been so random. It's just hard to tell how this weekend's going to go. But I think I saw a stat. Nobody outside the top 25 has a starting position as 1 in Vegas. And if you look at the starting lineup, other than really like Ryan Blaney, there's nobody back there anyways that I expect to win this week. So we could kind of get a little more normal since point standings are starting to be a factor into this weighted scale. And it's starting to kind of even itself out where your Rick Wares, all those teams, the smaller teams are falling to the back of the points. So that's going to be one thing to watch is the starting position now. Yes, Michael McDowell's up front still. Maybe that's legit. Maybe that stays longer. But this is a track that I think we'll see. I think we'll see how this will work. I wouldn't put a lot of qualifying history or starting spots as a trend for this week just because we're not even qualifying for this race. And it's been so random this year. I don't think you can put any stock into it yet.
Well, there's only, out of all the drivers that we picked this week, we only have 1 driver that we've all picked together.
We picked the entire field. That's shocking.
Yeah. If we don't have a winner this week,
we're in big trouble.
We are in huge trouble.
Let's see. That would mean that Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch just happens to be the 2 Las Vegas boys, William Byron, Matt DiBenedetto, Eric Almirola. That's it. Or just, Bubba Wallace, or crazier names. But those are the main names. If any of those drivers win, we're in trouble. So
And this is the one week that I was kicking myself almost when it was intriguing to get Kyle at 13. Yeah, 13-1.
12
You're
to
giving
1.
Kyle, or 12-1. You're giving Kyle at 12-1, and I don't see it, but crazier things have happened this year, obviously. But yeah, Kyle Busch right now is 12-1 for a Cup race at his hometown.
Yeah.
Think
Well,
about
that's
that.
good. The odds are good. So there are 4 drivers at 6-1. Post the odds up here again. So 4 drivers at 6-1, and CJ, you took all 4 of them. Somebody wants a win, even though trying to do it this way, the way the first 3 races have gone, you're rolling the dice there.
Yeah, it's still a gamble regardless, which I think when you see the names that are at 6-1, you realize how unpredictable kind of it has been so far. We still to this day, I mean, we've had 3 races so far. I don't know who's truly fast and who's got sustainable speed. I mean, like you said, McDowell's up there in the, what is he, 1, 2, 3, 4. He's like, what, 5th in points right now? Michael McDowell, really? And he won the Daytona 500. Okay, William Byron's won 1 super speedway race in his entire life. He won on the 1.5 mile oval on a track that nobody wins from outside the top 12 ever, and he started 31st. So when you come to a place like Las Vegas where restarts really matter, you've got a bunch of people that start outside of the top 15, top 20, and even win. It's a track position track where cars will hit the speed. They'll go around, they'll lap people. You get an off-time caution. Everybody gets trapped a lap down. You know, that kind of gives them the free pass to be able to control the race from there out. Just a weird set of circumstances. And I was hopeful that I'd learn more about where people stood after last week. But honestly, right now, I don't know. So I feel like I need to throw the blanket over the field, for lack of a better analogy, and hope that one of them comes through.
And the other 2, and I posted up here on the screen, your picks include Denny Hamlin and the only driver we have all agreed upon, Chase Elliott. So the defending champ. Maybe that's not a surprise that we're expecting Chase Elliott to break on through. And I'll ask the question regarding Elliott, Eric, because you take a look at Chase last year, and even though he finished 22nd and 26th, he led 73 laps in one race and 70 laps in the other.
Yep.
So what happened to him last year? Because that's the reason why I thought he was a good bargain at 11-1, because he seemed to prove that he could do pretty well here. Usually that's just bad luck.
Exactly. That's why I was shocked he was there too. I mean, you look at the year before, he was 9th and 4th. He should have 4 straight top 10 finishes. I think he's looked good this year. I mean, he can't help last weekend. I mean, they just didn't have a ton, but it was across the board. It was a lot of good guys that weren't great. But you look at the 500, he was right there. He finished 2nd. Caution comes out a little bit later, he wins. The road course race, just bad luck. I mean, that caution should have never flown, and we've talked about that, but he would have won that race. So here you are, you're giving me this guy for 11-1. And the spring race last year, he swept both stages, literally swept both stages, and he cut a tire. That's not his doing. He can't help he cut a tire in the final stage. And then that, like CJ said, that pit strategy went against them, and Kurt Busch stretched the final, him and DiBenedetto and a couple other guys in the playoff race stretched their second to last stint long. Caution comes out, they pin all those guys a lap down. They could pit, come back out, and get their track position back, where Elliott and those guys had to take the wave around, and because they couldn't pit for new tires because you want the wave around to be back on the lead lap. And it just was bad luck. And you're giving me that guy at 11-1, so why not? I feel like he can be a factor. I feel like it's a great bargain. And like I was talking to a friend earlier, these odds are Daytona, Talladega-like, because at this point of the year, Kevin Harvick, he's starting on the pole. Think of that. He's starting on the pole. He's a past winner at Vegas. He's got 5 top 10s in his last 6, and he's 6-1. It's like, wait a minute. That's usually 2 or 3-1 at the track like this. So we're getting good odds, and you're getting Elliott for 11-1. Bargain. You got to run all over that.
And then you also took so you did take Harvick and Logano out of the 2 favorites, but then you went with not only Elliott but Larson and Blaney.
Mm-hmm.
So, what about Larson's 10-1, Blaney 11-1, and Larson's a much better starting position than Blaney, so there's completely different there. But who knows? Based on what happened the first 3 races, maybe
Exactly.
Blaney's got the edge. But Larson has been. Let's see, he's got 6 top 10s in 9 races at Vegas, 12th or better in 6 straight, with 3 top 5s and 2 runner-ups. Blaney, meanwhile, 11th or better in 7 of his last 8 at Las Vegas, including 3 top 5s. So what's up with those 2 drivers for you?
Yeah, I just thought, Blaney, you look at Penske overall, they're really good at Vegas. And Logano and Keselowski, out of their last 11 starts there, they've got 10 top 10s. So Blaney's got that same equipment. And you look at his stats, you just go back a few years, 6th, 7th, 5th, 5th, 22nd, but 5th, 11th in this race last year.
Something's going wrong. I don't know what's going on, though. Is it starting position?
I think that is a little bit to do with, last week. He's never he lucks out some on road courses. I wouldn't say he's a strong road course racer. He'd even say that. He just kind of lucks out that people take themselves out, and there he is towards the end. The 500, he got caught up in that early crash. There was nothing around that one. So I think it's just been bad luck. But this weekend, I feel like we'll see what he's got. This is the time for him to start showing it. He's back in the points. He needs to. And you look last year, if you remember right, at the end of the race, it was him and Bowman. They should have won this race last year. And Chastain spins on the backstretch, brings out that caution, and it was that situation where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If they don't pit, everybody else has new tires, so they did the conservative route and pit. But if that caution doesn't come out, he's leading the race at the time of that caution. So that 11th place finish to me is more of an asterisk. He had a top 2 or 3 car that day, and you can get him at the odds that you could. So I thought, why not? And then Larson, look at what he's done in the past at Vegas. It's one of his better tracks. He's great in Xfinity there. Now he's in a Hendrick car. That's what CJ's been saying all this season. I'm hearing Kyle Larson's in a Hendrick car now. And look at what he did with the Ganassi car. And now you give him a better car. I thought he's had a pretty good start to the year. So for the odds, again, that they're given, why not take those 2 and see what happens?
All right. Meanwhile, CJ, you and I both went with Denny Hamlin. Hamlin, actually, I put more money on Hamlin than any other driver combined from the 3 of us this week. At 9-1, I just figured, like Elliott, I thought I was getting a pretty good number for Hamlin. He's in good starting position. Now, the only thing is, he only had 1 top 5 in his last 8, but that was the last race, which was 3rd in September. He led 121 laps. So it was by far the best race he has ever had at this track the last time he visited the track. So why do you think all of a sudden that happened? That Denny Hamlin was able to have a really good race last year here in his last attempt. But if that continues at 9-1, it's a bargain.
Well, yeah, last year I think last year, regardless of how far he went or wasn't able to go, get the championship, he had a much better season. He had momentum on his side. He was much more consistent throughout the year. I think it was his best career season to date. And a lot of that had to do with his ability to hit the settings on the tracks that have challenged him in the past. And I don't know if not having practice and qualifying ahead of that, because it was the fall race. Look at him in the spring race, and he was 17th despite starting 4th. I don't know, is he putting a little bit too much or too much weight behind qualifying and short run speed, maybe? Whereas they tuned out their car a little bit differently, more for the race, not knowing the situation in the fall. He goes out and he leads 121 laps and could have won the race, finishes 3rd, best performance there as well. So I think it's a combination of those factors, and we're under the same situation again this year, and look who's leading the points. It's Denny Hamlin, right? Yeah. So I think with the 121 laps led, the change in not having practice and qualifying, his consistently fast pace through these first 3 crazy weeks, puts him atop the Joe Gibbs Racing stable, in my opinion, at this point, despite the fact that Bell went out and won, and despite the fact that Truex last week probably looked like the strong strongest of all of them. I still think Hamlin's got the consistency, and we're coming to a track now where he's got very recent success. With those odds, give it to me all day. I think he's a bargain, right?
Exactly. That's why I invested the most on Denny and Chase. I just figured, hey, I'm getting bargains with those two guys, so I might as well just put most of my money there. And then I went with a bunch of long shots like Eric. And Eric, we both went with Bowman, Dillon, Briscoe, Reddick, Stenhouse, and Chastain. So we both have 6 long shots.
Never in a million years.
What's that?
Never in a million years I would have thought in a Vegas race, non-playoff race, I'd go with all those guys.
and we both did.
Yeah.
That's the funny part.
I went opposite. My strategy was just like, you know what? Take as many drivers as I can, because do I think they'll win? No. But I'm basing off these last 3 weeks. Yeah. And it's like, hey, I can't control a late race caution. We've seen so many flukish stuff, and last year, both races had a late race caution that changed the complexity of that whole race. And those are the type of guys that I'm sick of sitting back saying, man, I thought about William Byron last week. Like, he's in a Hendrick car, but no, he's best finishes 9th. Why would I? Well, this week, I'm like, why would I not? Why would I not?
Well, that's why. And again, it's not just we're just throwing darts at a board. There are little crumbs that say, calculated. Yeah. So let's go through it. Bowman, 25-1, good starting position, 13th or better in his last 4 at Vegas. September races, the last 2 years, he was 6th and 5th. I know we're not in September. That's the only negative, but still 6th and 5th. He was also 8th and 3rd at Kansas last year on another 1.5-mile tri-oval. And again, he's 25-1. He was one of my better. He's actually my best long shot. I put the most on him as a long shot, and so did you.
Yeah, and you got to think, too, this race last year, as I just said about Blaney, he was chasing Blaney down at the time of that caution. Either he or Blaney was going to win this race. That caution doesn't fly. So he's top 2. That's how good he was last year. And so if you put that back in, that's 3 straight top 6 finishes on that racetrack. He's looked good. Hendrick, we just talked about what Chase Elliott did there, and that's his teammate. So, yeah.
And he's got back-to-back top 10s.
Yeah, and he's coming on with some momentum. So this would be the type of guy that people, not a mainstream guy that you would look up and be like, whoa, wait a minute here. Michael McDowell, Christopher Bell, William Byron, and Alex Bowman won these first 4. Yeah. That's why. Again, calculated. That was the reason why I took him.
All right, we both went with Austin Dillon. Again, a decent starting position, 13th or better in 5 of his last 8 at Vegas, including 2 top 5s. He was 4th in one of the races last year. And 12th or better in all 7 Xfinity Series races with 4 top 5s and a win. In 2015, he led 183 laps from the pole in that win. So this is a pretty good track for Dillon.
Yeah, and he's been running well lately too. I mean, you take out Homestead, he was great. Pit strategy, I mean, they didn't have the most overall speed, but they're a top 10 car most of the day. And here's another 1.5-mile track. He runs good there. So again, the same odds that he's back there. Why not? Why not throw some money on him? And he could get lucky, another late race caution. They stay out of the pits. They're up front and still win. So the path is there for him to do another win.
CJ, Eric and I also went with Briscoe and Reddick. Briscoe's 35-1. Reddick is 50-1. Reddick has better starting position. But Briscoe, first Cup race, but he swept last year in the Xfinity Series, leading a combined 253 laps at this racetrack. Reddick, meanwhile, he crashed in the one race in the Cup, top 20 in the other. He also won his last Xfinity Series race here in 2019. So both of these drivers won in their last Xfinity Series race on this racetrack. Briscoe 35-1, Reddick 50-1. Which one would you go with?
Right now, I would go with Reddick, but honestly, you could go with either one. I think Briscoe's got a lot on his side because you got a teammate like, yeah, exactly right. Who does fantastic at these types of tracks. So he's got the equipment. Plus, he's been good here in the past, so come into some familiar territory for him. Reddick, for me, just gets a little bit more of the edge because I think he's shown a little bit more raw pace these early weeks. So I with the Reddick Dillon combination, I truly do think Richard Childress Racing has taken a step forward. I think what we saw last week, what we saw at Daytona, I think that's the real deal. And we started seeing it at the end of last year. So they've just carried that momentum forward. And you're seeing it in both cars. I think you're going to see that again on Sunday. I think they're going to have the pace on the field, certainly to run within the top 10 the vast majority of the day, if not the top 5. And then, who knows? We'll see whether Roush Fenway's step forward was a true step forward or not. I know we're not talking about those guys yet, but they're another team like Richard Childress Racing, who, if you're looking in the long shots, I would look for those teams that are showing early pace. But you're spot on the money with Chase Briscoe as well.
And Eric, we also went with Stenhouse and Chastain. Now Stenhouse, another sports book, by the way, his odds have already dropped almost in half. But we got him at 125. Both Stenhouse, Chastain's 150. But Stenhouse, in his last 2 races, in this race, in the early race at Las Vegas, 6th and 3rd.
Yep.
That's really good for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And Chastain, let's keep in mind, is Kurt Busch's teammate, who just happened to steal the win here last year in this race. And he has 1 win on this track in 8 Xfinity Series races. He led 180 laps in the 2018 race. So, hey, why not? You put a couple of bucks on him at 150 to 1. I put $100 on him. I actually put $4 on both Stenhouse and Buescher at 125 to 1 because Buescher was 9th in September last year. And we also saw what happened last week when Buescher looked pretty good early. So there are some intriguing 100 to 1 or more long shots.
Yeah, it's crazy they were listed as that. And Stenhouse, I remember being on a call with Brad Doherty last year, and they talked about how their 1.5 mile program is really improved. And I went back and looked, and they're like, yeah, if you look at their finishes leaving last year, it's like they're respectable. I remember at Kansas, he was doing good that weekend, and I think he got caught up in a crash or damage or something. And that was in front of him. It just wasn't his fault that he got wrecked in it. But they really have improved. And this race, you got to be aggressive, and at restarts, it kind of looks like Daytona, and that's where he's at his best at. So you're giving me him at 125 to 1 odds for those 2 straight top 6s in the spring race. I'm like, okay, I'll take it because, again, it's been a wild start to the season. I wouldn't be shocked if he stole a win. And then in the case of Chastain, it's like I kind of feel bad for the guy. I'm like, are they disrespecting him, or do they not realize his past stats have been with underfunded teams? Like, that is literally Kyle Larson's car last year. And Chastain's a really good race car driver. I think the world just doesn't know it yet. But it's like, you're giving this guy 100 or 150 to 1 odds in a car that's Kyle Larson's car that has 3 top 5s in its last 6 starts in Vegas. And, oh, by the way, the 182 laps led in a win was with Chip Ganassi Racing in the Xfinity Series, the same 42 car. It's just the series below him. So, for those odds, it would be hard to pass. So I've got to put money his way because one of these races he's going to win with these odds, and I'm going to feel bad I didn't pick him because
this season's going.
Who would have thought our over/under of new winners this year pretty much already hit?
Yeah,
3 races
that's
into
an
the season.
Embarrassment. Yeah,
but he's another one. He could keep this thing going.
And you also put a couple of bucks on McDowell, who has the 5th
Why
starting
not?
position. Yeah, and that's pretty much when you have, and he's been dialed in. So
top 10 every race. Yeah, it's to me, it's telling when he says we've done nothing different this year than last. I've done nothing different, and his car's up there. I think that tells you kind of how we talked on Monday, how these teams, how long is it going to take to know when these teams have upgraded between last year and this year? And I think as we talk, I think it's here. I think we know now that with the parts freeze and no testing and no practice, that this is what you have. I think the good teams are going to find their way consistently to the front, but eventually, right now, you got to ride the wave, ride the momentum. He's got starting position up front. Ford's pumping more money and resources to him now because it's a playoff car. So, for again, to give me those odds for a guy that's got 3 straight top 10 finishes on the season and he's starting 5th, got to take him.
And finally, CJ. I also put a couple of bucks on Di Benedetto. Why not? He was runner up in both races last year at 30-1, and also Custer at 66-1. Another teammate of Kevin Harvick's and Briscoe's. He has gotten better each race in 3 races at Las Vegas. He won Kentucky last year, a pretty similar racetrack, and he's 11th or better in all 5 Xfinity Series races at this track with 3 poles and 2 top 5s. So what about those two?
Yeah, I like Custer for the same reason that you do. Very consistent driver. He's a very good driver, was able to figure out a way to get into victory lane, despite being a race that he didn't dominate. Plus, like you said, teammate to Harvick at a track like Las Vegas, now coming in with consistency in terms of equipment and knowing the team for the second year at a place. I think he can truly do very well. Di Benedetto, I think so far this year has been a little bit unlucky. It would be nice to see him have a good weekend here at Las Vegas. It's definitely a place that he can. Like Eric said, now we know kind of where teams stand in terms of the development of this car and the parts over the season, what we'll be looking for. I hope that Di Benedetto is not one of those ones that is kind of lost in the wind. I'm hopeful that this week we truly get the sense for where he really is. I think this is the week that we would get that sense for him. If he's at the back, then he's probably not going to be one that you're going to go back to much for the rest of the season. But if he is, if it is just bad luck, this is definitely the place that he can overcome it. Out of the two, I'd probably end up going, honestly, with Custer, just because bad luck and momentum mean a lot in this sport from week to week.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't really worry about waiting another week with Di Benedetto. And our fantasy team, I went ahead and swapped out McDowell for Di Benedetto, because one guy is just red hot and the other guy just can't catch a break. So,
yep.
Hopefully it'll pay off. Last thing with you, Eric, and that is, we didn't really touch up a whole lot on the top 4 drivers, the 6-1 shots. But is there anything that you can say that's separating these guys, because they're all really good here?
Yeah, not a whole lot. They're pretty much the same. You pick your, almost take a coin and flip it. I mean, they're that close. There's not enough, I would say, trends lately to separate one from the other. They seem to all be there at the end. And
what's interesting is that all 4 of them never Harvick did lead 92 laps in both races last year, but 10th and 8th. Truex led 1 lap, Keselowski 2 laps, Logano did win, and he's back-to-back defending champ of this race, but he only led 55 laps. So it's not like the 4 guys who are 6-1 dominated on this racetrack last year.
Yeah, which is, I'm shocked they're all 6-1. I figured you'd maybe have a couple 6-1, couple 7 or 8-1.
Who do you think should be favored?
I'd say Harvick, because he's on the pole and he's got good stats there in the past. I would probably put Harvick and Logano, because Logano's won the last 2 years.
Absolutely.
And that whole old saying, like, keep picking them until they don't. So Keselowski, plus Logano's had good speed this year. He could have started off 2 for 2. Keselowski, I'd probably put maybe 8-1 range instead of up there. Truex maybe slide in 7 to 8-1. You got to remember, Truex hasn't won a 1.5-mile race in over a year. It's been since 2019. Back this track in 2019. So it's just hard to put them all at 6-1. It's kind of like Vegas is saying, here, choose 1 or 2 of these guys. It's these guys or the field is basically what they're saying. And the way the season's going, that most people, I think, would just, I guess I'll take a couple in the field if that's the box you're gonna put me in. But if this was years past, I think you would also see all 4 of these guys 5-1 or lower. But I think they just threw them at 6-1. And to me, I think Vegas is experimenting too. I don't think they know what to do. Let's just throw them all at 6-1. We'll see what happens.
Let's hope it keeps up. That's all.
Yep.
And let's hope we pick a winner this week.
Well, if we don't, there's a problem.
Yeah, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, so next week is Phoenix, site of the championship race again this season. So we'll talk about that. Eric, of course, you have loads of information to prepare everybody fantasy-wise. If you'd like to throw a few bucks on the race over at racereviewonline.net, correct?
That's correct. That, and then we'll have some sleepers tomorrow, track trends, and then the 5 burning questions on Friday before we go into the races this weekend.
And CJ, RotoWire?
RotoWire.com will have fantasy previews up for the trucks race, Xfinity on Saturday. Also the Cup race on Sunday, preview for that from a fantasy perspective. And then on Monday, we'll have the NASCAR barometer out for recapping Sunday's events. Hopefully we get a winner.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, remind us we need to talk next week about the truck race Friday night, that you're going to have 12 cars with the same sponsor, or 12 trucks with the same sponsor, and how you got a guy. It's an interesting story. Maybe it'd be a broadcast in itself.
Okay.
But Marcus Lemonis with Camping World, he's Camping World Truck Series, and he's stepping in. And why is there 12 trucks without a sponsor coming to this weekend? And why is the guy sponsoring all 12 of them? And it's like, okay, there's a guy stepping up, but is it also a problem that you've got literally 12 trucks coming into a race weekend
out of how many?
With zero sponsor? 36.
So that's a third of the field
with no sponsors, and one of them's the defending champion.
So these are good drivers.
Some of them, yeah. Some of them are pretty good drivers, and they don't have sponsors. And the sponsor of these series is stepping in, and then he's putting incentives on them too. It's kind of comical online. All these people are coming out like, well, can I join? And he's like, top 5, I'll give you 25,000. Top 10, I'll give you 10,000, and I'll give you another 5,000 to put my company on your wrap on your truck just to be out there. Wow. So I'll applaud Marcus for doing this, but on the other time, it's like, man, does that make the series look bad when you're going to watch this race on Friday and like all 12 of these trucks are the same thing?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting.
Is that what Mike Joy was talking about?
I think that's part, but mostly the
CJ doesn't think
Gregson.
So.
The main was Noah.
I think it's the Xfinity thing. That was, I mean, we were all watching that and our jaws just hit the floor.
Oh.
My said, I think he's going to win. And then literally going into the next turn, boom. And the interview afterward from Gregson was very, very candid.
Yes.
And based on the timing of that tweet, as Eric pointed out to me, I do believe it was related to Greg's interview.
And exactly what happened?
David Starr, a field filler, but a long history in the sport, was running the high line. Gregson was coming up, had a very comfortable lead, was on his way to win the race. Starr blew a tire, went into the wall, and Gregson had nowhere to go, plowed right into the back of him, out of the race. And then afterward, Gregson had some expletives to relay regarding Starr.
Okay. And so
even though it wasn't,
so this is like one of those things we talked. What was that?
It wasn't his fault.
Oh yeah, sure, he blew a tire. But this is what we talked about though before, as far as having drivers in races that don't belong.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then you have outcomes of races like this, and it's just not right. It's just
and that's what kind of Noah was kind of alluding to. Like, look, I drove the first stage at a corded tire. My tire was corded like his was. Look at his wreck. I didn't have that happen to me, and that ruined my race. I mean, it was 2 to go. I think 2 laps to go, and he was up by 7 seconds, like completely gone.
That was
like,
the Xfinity
he wasn't
race?
being caught. Yeah, Saturday night.
Okay,
yep.
So then that's why that driver won that had never won before.
Yes.
Who was that?
Yeah.
Correct.
Mike Snyder.
Okay, and
Yep.
What kind of ranking is he?
He's a
top 20.
He's
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say top 10 in Xfinity.
Okay.
Just,
Yep,
he's in a Childress car. He's in a good car.
So he's just young.
Yes.
Okay. Well, look, it's going to happen in the Cup Series too. And
Yes.
when it happens in the Cup Series, and if it happens in a big race, and if it happens in a playoff race, or knock someone out, or God forbid, Phoenix in November, then
it could happen anywhere at any time. I think that proves that situation. It doesn't matter how big your lead is, where you are on the track. I mean, it was he was going slow in turn 3, and literally the tire just blew, and he went right up in front of the leader.
Maybe it'll end up being a driver with no sponsorship.
I think there's where Joy's tweet was coming from.
Yeah.
The ones that are in there with that sponsorship maybe shouldn't have had that sponsorship. It's because it's mommy and daddy's money that's funding that car to be out there. So
That's one of the main things. That is the main thing on top of our list that we've talked about for years that needs to change in NASCAR, and that is
Yep.
some sort of salary cap, something to even the playing field. So
Yep.
sponsorship does not dictate who's out there and who's not. So, all right, guys. So we'll have more to talk about that and much more next week. And Eric, of course, you will pop in. We have our Monday show, so we kind of changed things. So this way, CJ and Eric can kind of get together every week and preview the races. And Eric is going to pop up every now and then with little clips that'll update things like recapping races and other things that Eric wants to get off his mind and onto from, instead of just paper, onto video.
Yep.
And we'll post it up on the YouTube channel. And of course, Eric will promote it on his website at racereviewonline.net. Guys, we'll talk to you again next Wednesday.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.